information I'm going to go through, some of it is from what I've experienced over time. I've been doing this about close to 10 years, and there's some information that I've collected over that time, and it's going to be in this PowerPoint. But then a good chunk of it is from legitimate articles, so books and scientific papers. So the purpose of what I'm trying to accomplish is helping people understand the absolute importance of wasps within the ecosystem and even with your honeybees, how they affect your honeybees, both negative and positive. And so as we go through this, we don't have, hours. There's so much about wasps that I can cover, but we're going to focus on some main points to kind of give you an overall. See, did I go ahead myself? No, I didn't. Give you an overall of what, of basically a refresher. Kind of forget everything you know about wasps right now. Just eliminate everything in your head. Just clean slate and utilize this, because I have done so much research on this particular subject. So, and it'll really help you out with your, I really think with your bees over time. All right, so we're going to go through first our relationship with wasps, and then really important point, what is a wasp? And then the second most important point, do wasps have a purpose? And then and then the biology of wasps, and then honeybees and wasps. And this slide is specifically made for beekeepers. I have other versions of this for just general public, but I'm trying to focus on your guys' minds, is to try and get you kind of thinking a wasp kind of way. So just a little bit about me, really quick. So again, I've been doing this about 10 years. I do a lot of my own research, but then as you can see in the far right here, bottom, I just, during the winter, when I'm not super busy, I just pour over books. And then I do a lot of my own experiments, and then normally I do removals for yellow jackets, any sort of wasp really. And I harvest those, and then I utilize them for immunotherapy. I sell them to labs, and then I just do a bunch of other weird experiments with wasps, and just love enjoying watching them. All right, so our relationships with wasps have gone really far back. This is a natural art piece from a long time ago, so I thought it was appropriate enough. But this is basically, this is from the British Museum. I got this picture from that. And it's a Roman Greek vase from 450 BC. And they didn't really know what was going on in the scene, except they can assume that it's some sort of religious thing. But you can kind of see here the hornets themselves, at least they look like hornets. They look like some sort of Asiatic hornet. And for some reason, there's a bunch of naked dudes getting stung by them. And so just ironically, the concept of wasps, what they are to us as people, are stingy. They sting us. It hurts a lot. And that's kind of as far as we go. Once they hurt us, then we're like, okay, you know what? I'm done with you. You hurt me. You guys are a bunch of blank holes. So that's kind of where we got there. And these are the things that I have heard over the years. Stings more than once, true. Attacks for no reason, actually false. Anyone annoying while eating food outside, well, that's true. Attacks my hummingbirds, true. Attacks my honeybees, true, for the most part. Have no real purpose, extremely false. And then nest in my home and property, true. And of course there's more. I've heard everything, and I don't know if I have heard one species of animal on this planet that has been called more names than I have ever. The wasp. It is very hated, and part of my research is also have been trying to deduce really why we hate them so much. For some people, it's obvious, but throughout of all the creatures on planet Earth, the wasp has the most, even besides mosquitoes and ticks. Beep, beep, beep. Got all. Oh, okay. Even besides ticks and everything else, there's even ways that scientists have been able to kind of show that they have some sort of purpose, and there's only a few select species. While with wasps, there's an estimated 300,000 species. But 30 species are identified, but there's more that they feel that there is that haven't been discovered yet. And it's really I would consider it is the most understudied creature on planet Earth right now. Just overall, just bar none. All right. Okay, so wasps. What is a wasp? That's really important, because if you don't know what a wasp is, then you're not going to know what you're actually hating. Sometimes you could be hating something that might not be a wasp at all, or a particular species of wasp that honestly you don't even need to worry about. It just looks scary. So to try and make it as simple as possible, I put them into categories, and this is a scientific categories. This is the best way for me to describe it to you. So you have truly social, you have semi-social, and then you have solitary. So with I'm going to use the word hymenopteran, which is bees, ants, and wasps and sawflies. It's the category which includes honeybees. So there's an order of wasps that has a worker caste, a division of labor, just like honeybees do. And then there is an order where they are semi-social, which is organized individuals working together. And then you have solitary species, which is just a species that just is on its own 100% of the time, for the most part. Is just by itself, it's its own queen, if you want to call it that. It lays its own eggs. Usually it's a parasitoid for wasps in that regard. So the truly social wasps, which has the worker caste, can include hornets, yellow jackets, and then sometimes other solitary species, which sometimes they are, then sometimes they aren't. There's usually in tropical climates. But for the most part, for the simplicity, we're just going to go for hornets and yellow jackets are truly social. Paper wasps are in the semi-social for the most part, probably about 90% of the time, I would say. And then when it comes to solitary, we have mud daubers, spider wasps, pollen wasps, potter wasps, horntails. That's just the tip of the iceberg, and it covers a very large genre of species. But I'm just kind of summarizing it for you. So keep that in mind. Let's just say yellow jackets, because there's more species of yellow jacket than there's hornet. Pretty sure. So we have yellow jackets, paper wasps, and then just solitary wasps. Let's just try to keep that in mind, that simplistic way, because obviously I'm not going to teach you everything within 30 minutes. See that picture? Okay, that's it. All right. So a bee, most of you at least should know what a bee typically does. At least I would hope so. Typically eats pollen for protein source, usually thick-bodied, no silver hairs on the face, often very hairy, pollen collecting hairs on the leg and the belly of females, stout legs with relatively few spines. Basically, everything about its biology, for the most part, is about collecting pollen. That's why it's usually so hairy. While with wasps, the reason they seem to be so non-hairy is because typically they eat animal protein. They have a skinny body, and each species has their own reason for their particular shape, but often very silvery hairs. So you probably don't look at yellow jackets very often close up. Most people don't. But it is, they have, the hairs are very actually silvery. It's kind of very white, especially when they first hatch, but they also kind of stay that way. And then they don't really have pollen collecting hairs. You're not going to see that on there. And then most of the time they have long, thin legs instead of, because the honey, like if you see a honeybee right on their, the end of the leg, can't think of the word at the moment, but it's usually flat, kind of round-ish, almost looks like a paddle. But for yellow jackets, it's just kind of more like straight with spines. So just kind of remember that most bees are going to have that paddle-looking, very back leg, but wasps, most all wasps are going to have a thin, long leg. All right, I'm going to do a test here. So sometimes I'm very surprised by the answers. So can you guys tell, I'm just going to have you guys raise your hands. Can you tell, can you see any difference between this one and this one? Just raise your hand if you can tell a difference. Majority, there's a few that can't. Strangely enough, there is a large amount of people that cannot tell the difference between these two. And I'm not sure why, but when you see them just fly by and you see them go into just a hole in your foundation or in your eave, I get a lot of calls thinking that they have a honeybee hive in their attic space, a lot, every single year. Mainly there is a specific species of yellow jacket that always confuses people that they think it's a honeybee. I'm not sure why, except the fact that it has a lot more black markings on it than it does yellow. So I'm assuming that's why it's confusing people. But I just kind of want to give you an idea. So the far, far left one is a European paper wasp. So that one, you rarely have to worry about it, almost never, with your honeybees. Ever, ever, ever. The main reason for that is because of their of the way they nest. It's completely different, which we'll get into. Yellow jackets, those are the ones that will, if your hive is weak, will go for your honeybees. If your hive is weak. If your hive is strong, they have a very difficult chance. And we'll get more into that a little bit later. And then, of course, the honeybee. But as you can tell, when you look at it, I mean, look at just this middle leg. It's nice and fat, and it's very hairy. It's a bit of a blurry picture. But if you look here, look at this paddle. See that paddle-like leg? That's where you're obviously going to be collecting a lot of pollen. And then just the hair is just overall a good thing for pollen collectors. While the yellow jacket hardly has any hair. They do have some, but hardly any. But look at the leg. Look how tubular it is. No flat, and then it's really quite easy to see. One thing I've noticed, if they're flying in the air, honeybees, they usually will have some sort of two legs dangling a bit, just a bit, while a yellow jacket doesn't do that very often. They only do that if they are investigating you. But for the most part, if they're on a mission, they're bullet-shaped. They're just hugged like this, and they're just whoosh. Like this one, looks like a queen from one sort. So she's really heavy. So she's dispersing her legs for weight distribution. That's why she's doing it. So usually when they're exploring, they have their legs open. But when they're on a mission and they're just traveling, then they just kind of go aerodynamic and go straight forward. While these ones, the paper wasps, these ones almost always have their legs dangling, just like that up there. They always seem to have it like that. I always like to call them, they're like drunk wasps, because they would never seem like they know what they're doing. They're just like, so the reason I kind of had the images here, so you can really see the difference if you kind of look at it, how extremely different they really are. The European paper wasp has a very narrow waist, right? While the yellow jacket, it's a little more chunky, a little more beefy. And so it'll give you a little bit time to just kind of look at it and memorize those. Does that make sense to everybody?
How often do you see paper wasps around here?
A lot. And we'll get into that. A lot. All right. The meaty part of this discussion. So point number one, wasps are great at pest control. So here, we'll use paper. This is, I never try to pronounce the name of this wasp, so it's called the Lopez wasp, because it's just a ridiculous name. But anyways, this wasp, I didn't turn my papers, almost there, was used for pest control. And a lot of solitary species are used for pest control. Quite a few, and even some of them date back to the 1930s. But for the most part, it's a more modern use. So I'm just going to read a little bit of it to try and so I can get the facts correct. So this wasp was used to control mealybugs in cassava, which is a dietary staple in Africa. It would parasitize the larva for the wasps to propagate. In 1990, this wasp had its full potential used in 26 African nations in an area covering 2.7 million square kilometers. To this day, the wasp has gained permanent control of the mealybug, saving the U.S. at least $200 million. It has also saved many Africans from famine. So this was from a book. And then I was able to find the document of how it worked. So basically, what happens is they have the problem with the mealybug on their, I'm going to summarize it as best I can. And they just release the adults. The adults go parasitize usually the larval stage. And then that wasp the larva that eats the larva, ironically, will consume it. And it reduces the population of the mealybugs just dramatically. So they keep doing that every year, and at some point, there's little to no infestation anymore, all without a drop of pesticide, because it's just way more effective. It's targeted, right? All right. All right, paper wasps. Again, something you're not really going to have to worry about with your honeybees because of their biology, but I think, in fact, I'm experimenting with it right now in greenhouses, utilizing them for caterpillar control, just for various species. But in the 1920s, the species of paper wasp was used in cotton fields of the Caribbean islands of St. Vincent and St. Kitts. The paper wasps were encouraged to nest around the edges of the field to control cotton leaf worm, which was destroying the crops. They were easily movable due to the small umbrella shape. It can be placed anywhere needed. This process was also used in the Philippines to help sap-sucking leafhoppers. Personally, I'm surprised that this is not used more often. I think the main reason they're not used too often is because of misconceptions. Because a lot of people will think, they see this, and they think yellow jackets. Oh my gosh, I'm going to die. But in reality, they're actually very docile if you know how to handle them correctly. Honestly, a nest like this, this is fairly early season, I would say probably. This was taken in my barn. I think this was probably taken in May, late May. If I do this correctly, probably even in the middle of the heat of the day, if I do it correctly, I can slowly take this off with my bare hands. Truly, truly, and I've done it. Mainly because these paper wasps, most paper wasps, but particularly these are the most prevalent, and they're from Europe, obviously the name. The reason they're so non-aggressive is because they don't have an official queen. They have a dominant female. So the queen is not born to become a queen. She has to fight to become the queen. So she uses her strength to be able to force her dominance on the rest of the other quote unquote queens. So they're all actually more like gynes and some more than gynes. A gyne is it's basically a pregnated female that is not a queen. That's the best way I could describe it. And so she doesn't have any purpose yet until later. So if she dies, they just another one asserts their dominance on it. Now remember, I'm summarizing this as much as I can. It's a very complex social order on these little tiny hives, just very complex. There's a lot of them that will have individual personalities, different sizes. And they also will recognize each other by their sweat glands on their faces, and also some species will recognize by the shape and colors patterns on their faces. So they actually do have a degree of face recognition, at least with their own species. We don't know if they have face recognition for humans yet. But, so if you tore down this nest, they're going to fly off and make a new one. So their concept of defending the nest is a lot less important than yellow jackets. While for yellow jackets, it's a one-time thing. You destroy their nest, it's over for them, for that genetic line. But for these, they'll just do something else with their life. So it's just easy for them. And also, we'll get into it, these ones actually do store food. They store honey, which I even actually have honey available, which will be another thing we'll talk about later if you want to go that route. Okay. So about wasps being used, there's been lots of research, and it's slowly going, slowly increasing. A lot of scientists are looking more into it because of its value, but they're discovering that plants, not all plants, but a good source of them, when they are attacked by a pest, or even just by, let's say you cut the grass, you know that smell when you cut grass? Okay, that is technically, from what I was told, is a form of pheromones. Not pheromones, but kairomone. So it's because of the K. And that kairomone is basically a reactive communication from the plant saying, I'm in danger, I'm hurt. I'm communicating with anything that can recognize this chemical, volatile chemical. And so there's some species of plants that have utilized this for, I mean, it shows a picture of a ladybug, but I'm focusing on the little paper wasp there. Ironically, that's a picture of a European paper wasp. So, and so they utilize these, the plants will utilize this kairomone, and the wasp will be attracted by this kairomone and come to the rescue of the plant. And it will take whatever pest that it has on there, because they're correlating that smell has a nice juicy caterpillar on it possibly. So they're going to investigate it. So they're really diving into this more and more, I'm noticing. And I think it's really important we understand this. And could you imagine if you could be able to create artificial kairomone and place it on certain areas of a crop, and then a bunch of wasps come by, you just plop your wasp nest and they just go over there, take everything out and leave. I mean, think about the utilizations of it. All right. I did my own math. That's where I went to school. Okay. So this species of yellow jacket, not the bottom one, ignore the bottom picture. It's just a cool picture. I really liked it. But the common aerial yellow jacket, we're just going to focus on this species for a moment. It is obviously a species of yellow jacket. And the amount that it consumes, once I did the math, is unfounded. So this species, in a single aerial nest, can consume about 77 pounds or more of arthropods in one season. Usually caterpillars, but sometimes they'll go for crickets and some other hard shell, but mainly soft-bodied insects. So, and each season is about 7 months long for the nest. On average, there is one nest per forested acres. Now, this is an estimate, remember, not an exact. So if you add up all the aerial nests, I'll just say, in Snohomish County, and total it to the number of arthropods eaten by all these nests by weight, it would amount to over 27 million pounds in one season. Now, I have over-fact-checked myself over and over again. So yes, 27 million pounds in just Snohomish County. Snohomish County is roughly about the size, I think, of Pierce County. So if you, and you're only forested areas, by the way. I only calculate because I went to the Department of U.S. Forestry, and I calculated because they have an amount of forested areas. I used that number, and then I calculated that per acre, and I calculated everything. So it's about 27 million pounds for Snohomish County. That's a lot of bugs, isn't it? So imagine if these species went extinct. That's just one species in one season and one area. We kind of start to see the idea of why wasps are important in that category of pest control, because it's a requirement, really. So, and so let's see. This, oh yeah, and this doesn't include the other 7 species in Snohomish County. So we have about 7 species roughly here, and in Washington State there's about 9, I believe so. So if you apply these parameters to all of the U.S. forests, going to amount to 15.4 billion pounds for all of U.S. forests that we have. That's the U.S. forestry put. So 15.4 billion pounds. Do you want 15.4 billion pounds in your yard of insects? I don't think so. Well, that's what they do for us. So that's just one little facet. Just one tiny one. Okay, so there is actually flowers that require wasps, and bees will not touch them. Certain ones, there's certain orchids, such as hellebores. In fact, that's the picture, the blurry old one. That is a male species of vespid, but I don't know exactly which species of yellow jacket it is, but it's a male. And basically what happens is that the flower produces a fake pheromone of a female, and then there's 2 little, I can't remember the name, but little dollops. I'm going to call them dollops on the end of the pedestal of the flower. And when the male goes there, he tries to mate with the flower. Of course, doesn't succeed, and so it deposits the pollen and the reproductive compositions on that male. And he's like, "Oh, that didn't work. Let me go to the next one." And then pollination succeeds. So there's also figwort flowers, hogweed, ivy, African milkweed, all require certain yellow jackets to pollinate. Not to say that there's other species that will try, because there is evidence sometimes when there's an individual flower that requires a specific species of insect to pollinate. Sometimes other bugs will try. They won't do very well, but they'll try. But for these ones, wasps are needed. The picture on the bottom is a European paper wasp. He was just, well, actually she was just gorging herself in early spring in a bunch of dandelions. So I just picked her up and I found her covered in pollen. So, and she doesn't have hairs on her. And then the one at the top is a great golden digger, I believe, and that one's pollinating blackberries. This one I almost took it out because a lot of people have heard about it, but I'm going to give you, it's just in case you haven't. The fig wasp, a lot of people have heard about it, but basically without, I think it was 70%. I don't think I have it in here, the notes, but I think about 70% of species of figs require fig wasps to pollinate. So without fig wasps, our availability of figs would be extremely low. So if you like, well, old-fashioned fig Newtons, the new ones are garbage, but the old-fashioned fig Newtons, well, actually, honestly, you wouldn't have fig Newtons because you never had figs because you didn't have the wasp. So if you like fig Newtons, thank the wasp. Their biology is a little complicated on how they do it, but the queen digs a hole in there. She lays her eggs, an abbreviation of it. The eggs hatch out, the males hatch out. The males live about, I think it was a week, and they mate with the females with inside there, and then she pops out. She usually, when she pops out, then she'll go to the next flower and do the same thing over again. The males don't even have wings. They don't even need them because they never leave. So that's their entire life is inside of a little fruit. Okay, how much time do we got? We got 7. Is it already 7:45? How much time do I got, Mary? 13 minutes. I tried so hard. Okay. This, I'm going to spend the rest of the time on this, on the yellow jackets. So the spring is the most important part I think I'm going to bring up here, and then the very end, which is summer. So yellow jackets in the spring, there's no nests quite yet. There's just a bunch of queens that have been hibernating in diapause in winter. So they've been under a log in between just whatever crevice they can to overwinter so they don't freeze. And when it's just about warm enough, she wakes up and she's going to need to find a place to nest. But the first thing she does is goes for carbohydrates. And then once she finds enough sugars to get back to what she lost during the winter, all the fats, she's going to regain that fat back. Then she's going to start a little tiny nest by herself. And as you can see the picture in the bottom here, she's collecting some wood. Oh, excuse me. She's collecting some wood, so they just chew on pieces of somewhat decaying wood, usually like sun-bleached wood, because it's easy to peel off the top. She makes it into a ball of like a mucousy wood pulp, and then she extrudes it into a paper ball. And of course, she has the comb on the inside, which she created first, and she lays usually about 5 to 7 eggs in there. And then once that sets up, then she starts really hunting for mainly for this species, for arenaria, aerial yellow jacket, for caterpillars. She will eat some of it, some of the food that she collects, the protein. She usually collects she consumes the blood of the caterpillar, but for the most part, it's going to be reserved for the brood. So once the workers hatch, suddenly it just becomes it kind of grows really fast. Everyone start doing the foraging for her, and she stays in the nest. So then, as time goes and it gets to closer to end of the season, she now directs. Scientists still don't know why, or not why, but how they do it. They still don't, even for just a basic yellow jacket. They don't know how they do it. But she decides she needs to start making males and queens, the new queens for the next season. So she's going to utilize old cells from the worker cells, and she's going to put eggs in there. Usually for the males first. She usually puts the males in first, and those ones are non-fertilized, as you know, like with like most males, they're unfertilized eggs and they hatch. Has to do with the whole chromosome stuff. Once those produce, then she starts really she makes new comb. She has the workers make new comb that's extra large for the queens. Then she lays the egg. This is where we don't know how they create the queens, but somehow the queens get really extra big and their ovaries are developed. And since their ovaries are developed, they can become a queen. So they're going to hatch out late season, and then they're going to start feeding, getting themselves really fat, and then they're going to make a maiden flight outside, and then she's going to mate with other males from other nests, and then she usually comes back and forth, just going out, having a good old time, and then the nest, because at this point, the old queen usually dies by this point, and she's done making eggs, one lay eggs, so all the workers slowly die off. Now this right here, at this point, is where you guys get the brunt of the yellow jackets. So the ones I mentioned previously in the spring, the aerial yellow jackets, those are the ones actually not bothering you. Those ones are actually done with their cycle, usually by sometimes the beginning of July or just the end of July. They're done with their cycle, and the workers are not going to bother the honeybees that much. It's only usually about late May to the species you see in this picture, this big old log, that those are the ones that are going to bother you. There's 2 species. And one is called the common yellow jacket, and the other one is called, I always use the Latin name. What is the common name for it? Western yellow jacket, there it is. It's the common yellow jacket and the western yellow jacket. Those 2 are the ones that will cause you problems. The other species, honestly, just don't really bother. And the reason I know this
is because I utilized my honeybees when I had them until the bulldozer, right, Mary? What I watched is what kind of yellow jackets would it be affecting my honeybees. So I was able to identify the species, and it's just those two species. In fact, the western yellow jacket was the one that loved the honeybees the most. Basically what I'm saying is that when you trap in spring, you're trying to trap queens to stop them from nesting, there's a really, really good chance that you're not doing anything to help your honeybees not get attacked by yellow jackets, mainly because of the species you're collecting are ones that are kind of worthless when it comes to attacking your honeybees. So, and when you're trapping during the middle of the season, you'll say, you do the classic, I see it all over social media, you put a little pitcher of water or sugar water, you put the meat over the top, and the yellow jackets fly in, they go in the water and they drown, soapy water, and everyone has their idea of how to do it. You may be depleting somewhat of the population, but one nest, like you saw before, this nest will have upwards of 3,000 to 4,000 individuals for the one nest, if it's a healthy season, not every time. So just if it's a healthy, this one probably had about 3,000 at the end of its season. The reason they're going after both protein and carbohydrates is because there's no food production inside the nest anymore. Meaning, previously, the way that the workers would get their food is that they would go out, let's just say get a caterpillar, they're going to munch it up into a ball, and they're going to feed it to the larva. The larva will consume it, and then the adult, and remember the workers, they cannot eat solids in the same way that the queens originally could. Their intestinal tract is too small, so they need liquids. So they feed the solid to the larva. The larva have a big enough digestive tract, and then they consume it and regurgitate a protein juice, carbohydrate, saline-rich juice. And then the workers, I wish I had a video of it, but basically the worker will go up to the larva and tickle it with its antennae, and then they go, bleh. and then the yellow jacket will eat that. And they find it very yummy, so leave it to them. But that right there is important, because once she stops laying eggs, the only thing that's being developed are male brood, and they don't need as much food. In fact, a lot of times they're left in the lurch, because the males are only required just to have just enough to survive, because they just need them to hatch and mate with queens. But the females, the new queens, they need a lot of nutrients, just a ton amount. We're assuming, anyways, for the reason to get their ovaries developed. But we do know that they just consume a lot, because they're twice as big as the workers. And so if it's a healthy nest, the workers now are struggling to find carbohydrates from their own nest. So they're going to go for other carbohydrates, and they're going to go for other proteins. And sometimes they'll be desperate enough, they'll take that caterpillar and they'll try to squeeze as much. I always forget the name for the blood of insects. Whatever, I can't remember. Hemolymph, yes, thank you. Every time. In fact, I was practicing it. Hemolymph, but I always forget it. And they will try to extract hemolymph with their the inside of their facial structure. I can't think of it anymore, but they consume that blood and they try to get it in there, just try to get any amount of protein, but they don't do it as well as the larvae do. So when you have your yellow jackets start attacking your hive, let's just say that, you just start seeing them come in constantly. Try this for this season. First, don't trap in the spring. Just don't do it. You might be hurting a population you don't even know you're hurting. And it won't even be worth it, because it won't actually affect you anyways. When they are going after your hive, you're noticing it during the heat of the summer, try this. It's an experiment that I'm trying to get beekeepers to do, and I kind of want to hear back on what happens. So instead of trapping a death trap, make a live trap. A live trap that will actually encourage them. And it's going to sound really weird, but hear me out. So let's say you have an acre. You have one hive. You start noticing that there's a flight pattern of yellow jackets going this way. So you try to find the nest, you can't find it. So then they're just bombarding your hive, and your hive is weak, and you're worried. It's your only hive. You want to keep it safe. So most people are going to put a trap somewhere around that area, or the dishwater and all that kind of stuff, to try and kill as many yellow jackets as you can. But here's the problem. Even if just one yellow jacket skips that trap and goes to your nest and then goes back, the damage is already done. Everybody knows it's there. So they're going to double their efforts because they know there's really free food here, a lot of it, and our nest doesn't have any. So there's a lot of free food here. It's easy to get. So they're going to keep doing it, and so you're still going to have a bit of a problem, and you're still going to be killing all these yellow jackets, but you're still not really solving the issue. So instead, somewhere usually about 20 feet, if you have that room, the further the better, put out a free open buffet of both protein and sugar. Just whatever you feed your bees, doesn't matter. You can put honey there if you want to. Just put it on like a bird bath, and just, who cares? Just somewhere up high a little bit so other critters don't get into it. Don't put any poisons in it. Don't put, I've heard the thing of cat food and put, fipronil. Try not to do that. The only reason I say that is because you don't know where that wasp is actually taking it. So sometimes that wasp doesn't always take it back to the nest. I can get into that more, but we're just going to leave it at that for now. Try to have them focus on an even easier food source that's out of the way, and you don't have to worry about it. Just let them focus on this sugar, and they're going to die out anyways, eventually. Their whole nest will be completely gone, and there's hopefully a good chance they're not even going to bother with their hive, because what you have provided them is even better. And do it as early as possible. So as soon as spring hits, you can always put out these live traps around your property and just let everyone have a buffet. Even your bees might even go for it, probably will. But yeah, that's a theory of mine. Yes, go ahead.
How they could species kind of mitigate that pest? Because you talked about they lost staying originally. How do they control them and keep them from being control, coming off the same members as they are, and participating in those species?
Good question. So the ones in St. Kitts, I believe the article read that they used the native species that were already there. So they just basically they congregated them. So it's really easy. Literally with a paper wasp nest, you just take it out. Usually I do it in the morning. Take it off. You just not super glue it. You hot glue it to a board, and you set it out, and you got a new nest. With the European paper wasp, it is across the board infested throughout the entire United States. You cannot, there's no good way to eradicate it. It is very much instilled into the environment now. So much so that it's basically just naturalized. So I have been trying to find out what native species we have here of paper wasps and how they're being affected. I am noticing slowly, in a positive way, that they're actually coming back a bit. Because for a while I noticed that they were I hardly see any native species. I believe we have about 3. But with the European paper wasp, they're just they just proliferate just crazy. But I'm noticing with other things I've researched, there is a way to, instead of trying to remove the invasive species, is to encourage the native ones. And encourage it in a way that will benefit that particular species and give them an edge in the system. That's a theory. But so far, with especially the solitary species, there hasn't been any, because it's the mealybug, right? Once the mealybug dies out, the wasp dies, and there's no more population. So that is one reason why it's been used so much, because it's gone, because now there's no need. In fact, I heard from a professor in the UK, you can actually buy a little canister of these little solitary wasps that will attack the larva of the moth, clothing moth. What do you call it? Cotton moth. The ones that eat your clothes. In the UK, they have a problem with it. So you can actually buy the wasp and put them in your house, and they hatch out and they fly around into your clothing, and they parasitize the larva. And then once the larva population is gone, there's no more wasps. So you don't have any wasps flying around in your house. So the similar concept happens within the fields. The thing is, according to your point, there is so much more research that needs to be done, but there is very little research being done right now on wasps. Very, 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 very little compared to, like, for example, compared to the honeybee. It is, some scientists consider it the most studied creature in the world. But because of its value, it has a value, right, to it, so there's a lot of money put into it. But with yellow jackets, the value is unknown. So if you don't know the value, you're not going to put any value into it. So really studying these insects is really crucial, like beyond crucial. Yes, go ahead.
With the live trap, so if you have this open buffet and you're including sugar, so like the bees might want to partake as well. Will the yellow jackets get territorial and try and attack the honeybees while they're trying to just get the honey that's been set out, or will they just be like, yay, food?
So that's a good question. The answer to that one is probably not, but this is why it'd be a great idea to experiment. And this is how good things are found out, right? So let's say, and also because remember, especially with any hymenopteran hive, any social insect that is going to send out workers, typically, especially with yellow jackets, I'm speaking from a yellow jacket point of view, they do count how many they're sending out and how many are successful coming back. So I'm hoping that honeybees would logically do the same thing. So they're going to send some out, and then some are not being very successful. Maybe that food source isn't useful, and then they'll start ignoring it. That's a little more based on theory. But if you really feel that it might be affecting your hive, but I don't know how you could know it's affecting your hive. But if you feel that it is, then I would just stop. Or maybe move it further away. Maybe the further you move it, maybe you get closer and closer to the actual yellow jacket nest, and then you basically won't have any yellow jackets even near for foraging phases, foraging distance, I mean. So does that answer your question? Okay, cool. Yes?
So you said that for the traps, you put in some carbohydrates and protein. What do you use for proteins?
Anything. There was a study done in California that canned chicken it was really effective. That was in California, of course. Some people use cat food. Some people use jerky. Jerky's a little tougher for him to chew off. So I would try chicken, honestly. Experiment.
Chicken?
You could do cooked chicken. Yeah. I think the only reason they use canned chicken is because it already has a lot of salt in it. And so it won't rot as quick when it's out in the open. And it doesn't harden as quick as like cooked chicken, which will harden really quick in the open. But I don't know. But yeah, you could try. And then with the sugar, with the carbohydrates, just sugar water. Yeah. What's that? Yeah, fruit. You could just put out, you're done eating the watermelon in the summer, and just put it out on your little bird bath thing. Bunch of different things. Does that answer your question? Yes.
So you were talking about how the wasps will kill the cotton mouse, right?
The moths that eat the cotton. Yeah.
So those wasps, they'll stay there as long as the moths are there, so like even if they're all year round.
Yeah. So if you have, that's a really big problem. You have a lot of moths in your closet. I have to ask you why you have so many moths in your closet. But but yeah, if the moths are there and there's population where the wasp can parasitize the larva, then yeah, the cycle will continue. But logically, usually the population will die off because there's no competition in your bedroom. At least there shouldn't be. Yes.
Just a fact check here. I've been seeing on social media that some people will stuff a brown paper bag, tie it up, and hang it. What is there fact to that? Is there truth to that to keep wasp at bay, or whatever the point may be of that? Relate to that?
Yes, I can definitely relate to that. One day I will make a video on this. I just haven't done it yet because It doesn't need, because I need a lot of data to try and reduce what other people are trying to say, because no, it doesn't work. I'm just going to be straightforward. The reason I'm going to try to make a summary, the reason it doesn't work is because their idea is that wasps are territorial. That's not necessarily true. I don't know where everyone got that. The reason I can say that is have I hit in this one? I thought I had it in this one. Is that they really aren't that territorial. I don't have, maybe in a different one, but I have, on a typical season, I will take, there's 4 species I'll take of yellow jacket, and I'll put them together in one box. A bunch of different nests from different areas. Put them one together to create like one big hodgepodge of a nest, and they don't kill each other. In fact, they become almost one nest. And I do it with every single species. They've never had an issue. They don't fight the other nests that are next to each other, the other of different species. I've had houses where I've found 7 individual aerial yellow jacket nests, the big ball of paper, 7 on one house, and they were just feet within each other.
Yeah, we've had those paper wasps too, in our eaves, but they only get so big, and then they don't finish. Or what happens with them?
So what you're probably seeing are 2 different species. So yellow jacket and a paper wasp are completely different in almost every kind of way, and their biology, and their cycle and everything. The paper wasps, I have seen them nest inside the fake decoys. So that already kind of debunks it already right there. Basically saying that the earring paper wasp is highly intelligent. The idea that a paper bag is going to stop it from making a nest because of territory, it just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't. I have never seen it work on anybody's house. I really wish it did, actually, because I would actually be selling them so I can make money on it. But I'm not going to sell something that doesn't actually work. Also, with the paper wasps, I don't know where the territorial thing came in, because they actually will share each other's nests, which we didn't get into. But that same species that people are saying are just leaving because of a paper bag, those ones will actually visit each other's nests. And they will, sometimes a queen, a gyne that's not a dominant female, she's not allowed to lay any eggs. But she goes to the nest that's really within inches from her, and she'll make a friendship, if you want to call it that, with the dominant female in that nest. And she will allow her to have a little section of that nest to lay eggs. So the dominance phase only happens in the very beginning of spring, and when everyone's deciding who's going to be what. It doesn't usually happen later in the season. So there's so much to it of why it doesn't work, but based on everything I've seen and everything I've experienced and the research I've tried to go through, no.